At exactly 6:32 in the morning, I woke to the sound of rushing water that didn't belong in my world, not at that hour, not on my property. For a split second, I wondered if a pipe had burst, or maybe I just left the hose running like an idiot. But when I stepped onto my back deck and my slippers still half asleep and clutching my coffee like a life raft, the scene below snapped me awake faster than any caffeine. There was my pool shining silver blue under the first light, and snaking over the fence from my neighbor's yard was a bright orange hose dangling right into the deep end. And standing there like she was leading a homecoming parade except the band forgot to show up was Karen, the self-appointed HOA enforcer of Roe. Her hair was yanked back so tight it looked painful, robe cinched up like she was about to storm the beaches of Normandy, and her jaw so locked I swear you could have cracked walnuts on it. She didn't see me at first, too busy muttering about bylaws and property values, about how my pool was some unsanctioned aquatic hazard dragging down the whole neighborhood's reputation. You ever just freeze coffee halfway to your lips because reality is so absurd it borders on performance art? That was me. I watched her tilt the hose draining my pool like she was siphoning gas from a getaway car. And for a moment I let the ridiculousness of it all settle in. Here's a woman so obsessed with control she got up before dawn just to trespass and drain water that wasn't hers. I let it go for a beat, then called out nice and calm, "Morning, Karen." She damn near toppled in, jerked upright, and shot me a look that landed somewhere between guilty child and dictator caught in a coop. She stammered something about community safety and standing water violations, quoting her secret HOA spell book like it was the law of the land. I just took another sip, trying not to laugh. Most folks just knock if there's a problem, I told her. That's when her whole posture shifted. Shoulders squared, voice suddenly official. "The board has decided," she declared, "that your pool is a liability. I'm taking care of it before someone gets hurt." With Karen, it's never just her talking, it's always the board or the committee or the community, even if she's acting alone at dawn, with a garden hose and a grudge. I reminded her for probably the 100th time that my house was technically outside the HOA. Grandfathered out. The boundary map was clear as daylight, and she hated that fact like oxygen hates fire. She snapped back, "Jurisdiction is flexible when safety is at stake," which, let's be honest, is the kind of line you only hear from people who've already lost the argument. I could have gone down there, yanked the hose away, maybe even called the cops right then. But with folks like Karen, that's just feeding the beast. She thrives on confrontation. She wants the spectacle, the shouting, the whole fence line drama. What she can't handle is someone who won't play along. So I turned shut the deck door and let her think she'd won the morning. Through the blinds, I watched her coil up the hose and strut back to her yard like she'd just signed a peace treaty. But believe me, I wasn't letting it slide. I started documenting everything, set up a couple cameras, just obvious enough for a snooper to notice the red light. Logged every weird move, every interaction. And when I called the sheriff's office for a little hypothetical legal advice, I made sure to drop Karen's full name. The deputy chuckled. "Yeah, apparently she's a regular." That night, sitting by the pool with cicadas singing overhead, I wondered how far she'd actually go. People like Karen aren't dangerous like grizzly bears, they're dangerous like termites. Small, relentless gnawing at the foundation until you're forced to do something about it. I had a feeling she was about to give me the opportunity. Next morning, I got up even earlier, half expecting another performance. And I wasn't wrong. By 7:15, there she was again, this time with a clipboard disposable camera and tape measure swinging from her wrist like a badge of office. She crouched at the fence, snapping photos at weird angles, measuring like she was CSI. She was building her case not just for the HOA, but for the sheriff, the county, heck, probably the state if she felt ambitious. It wasn't about water anymore. She wanted to bury me under paperwork code violations, public hazard complaints. So I filmed her quietly narrating the time and her every move. If she wanted a reality show, I'd make her the star. It escalated from there. I came home to a neon orange notice on my mailbox: community violation, unsafe pool conditions, removal required. Signed, Karen, acting president, HOA. Except there wasn't any acting president, and the HOA had no authority over my lot. It was like getting a ransom note with the sender's return address. I kept it for my evidence folder, of course. My plan was simple: let her pile up enough overreach that when I finally went to the sheriff, there'd be no wiggle room. Later that week, I ran into my neighbor Dan while dragging the trash cans out. He gave me this knowing look and said, "She's after you now, huh?" Apparently, I wasn't her first victim. Dan got hit with 3 garage door color notices in 2 months. Lisa got written up for unauthorized foliage expansion translation. Her roses grew past some imaginary line. Karen had a pattern, and my out-of-bounds property was the ultimate challenge. So I baited the trap. Invited friends for a barbecue by the pool. Nothing wild, just music, burgers, kids splashing. Sure enough, Karen stormed out within 20 minutes, phone out filming, yelling about violations and unsafe gatherings. I just leaned back, burger in hand, and said, "Karen, this isn't HOA property. Call whoever you want." She did, right on speaker so everyone could hear. Deputy arrived. Karen dragged him through my gate, huffing about community codes. He flipped through my folder photos, videos, neon notes, while Karen demanded he shut me down. Finally, the deputy looked at her and said, "Ma'am, this property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. He hasn't broken any laws. You, however, have been trespassing." The look on her face, like someone realizing they've been playing Uno at a poker table, was priceless. But humiliation only made her more desperate. Soon there were flyers, mold, mosquitoes, biohazards, you name it, stuffed into mailboxes, taped to light posts, even stuck on my trash can. I kept every copy, building my binder thicker by the day. The real twist came 2 weeks later: a formal letter from the county inspector, courtesy of Karen. He showed up, clipboard in hand, with Karen right on his heels, pointing at every imaginary flaw. 20 minutes later, he told me, "Your pool's fine, up to code." He turned to Karen. "You really shouldn't be entering other people's property." The sheriff, who showed up to keep the peace, looked so tired I thought he might just pull up a chair and take a nap. Karen, mascara streaking, sputtered about conspiracies and attempted drowning, all witnessed, all documented. That was the first real crack in her armor. The neighborhood caught on. Dan told me he saw Karen marching home soaked and muttering. Lisa's kids called it the big splash. Suddenly, Karen was the punchline, not the threat. But you know how it goes. Humiliation breeds escalation. Next morning, 3 new neon notices on my mailbox: unsafe chemical storage, unlicensed aquatic facility, biological weapon hazard, all signed Karen, acting president. The woman was relentless. Then the real twist: an official-looking letter from a law office accusing me of negligent endangerment and threatening legal action if I didn't drain my pool in 10 days. Thing is, the language was pure Karen dramatic, over the top. I called the firm. They had no idea who she was. She'd faked it. That was the line crossed. Forgery and harassment aren't just neighborly squabbles, they're crimes. The sheriff came by, binder in hand, laid it all out: videos, letters, the pool incident. While we talked, Karen marched over, clipboard in hand, demanding answers. The sheriff cut her off. "Ma'am, we've received evidence of ongoing harassment and fraud. I strongly suggest you stop before this gets worse." For a split second, her bravado slipped and real fear crept in. But did she stop? Of course not. 3 days of peace then. I found my pool cover slashed fertilizer dumped in the water. Green slime by morning. Every piece went in the binder. Dan shook his head. Lisa rolled her eyes. Half the neighborhood saw her skulking around, but she didn't care. By Friday, a big red warning sign was staked in my yard. Unsafe pool, public health hazard, acting president. Public smear campaign front and center. That was my last straw. I called the sheriff this time, not just for harassment, but criminal mischief and defamation. Deputies came out, took evidence, took photos. Karen stormed over, bullhorn in hand, screaming about corrupt sheriffs and community standards. The deputies weren't having it. They read her a formal warning, told her any further action would result in charges. Still that night, I caught her on camera, dressed head to toe in black, trying to drain my pool with a siphon like some cartoon villain. I filmed the whole thing, gave it to the sheriff next day. "That's it," he said. "We'll take it from here." The neighborhood was quieter after her arrest. A relief, honestly, but also the kind of silence that hums with leftover tension like the air before a summer storm. 3 days later, Karen was back. No apologies, just fire in her eyes. She hissed over the fence, "You think this is over? This is about preserving standards." I just raised my mug and said, "Careful, Karen. Gravity always teaches a lesson." She stormed back inside, but I knew she'd be back. And sure enough, she came again, this time at 2 a.m., dragging 2 neighbors into her crusade, flashlights and buckets in hand. But my new floodlights caught them mid-mission. Deputies arrived, caught her with a crowbar by the pool pump. She was finally cuffed, screaming about lawsuits while the neighborhood watched from their windows. Even Dan came out to watch, arms crossed, muttering about time. The next morning, the place felt lighter. Lisa brought muffins, Dan toasted me with a beer, and my pool at last was just a pool again. At the next HOA meeting, people actually talked like neighbors, not jurors. Karen, meanwhile, faced trespassing and fraud charges enough to finally strip her of that iron-fisted authority. Her house stayed dark for months. And that's the thing, sometimes the real win isn't the sheriff's warning or even the binder of evidence. It's the silence that finally settles in. People like Karen, they burn out under the weight of their own obsession. The pool glowed in the twilight that night, and I caught myself smiling. Gravity really does have a way of teaching lessons you never forget. So what do you think? Where's the line between standing up for your rights and becoming your own worst enemy? Have you ever dealt with a Karen like mine? Drop a comment, share your war stories, and tell me, what does real justice look like to you?